Hello, and welcome to another edition of Grown Folks Business, GFB, if you're funky. So, I want to begin by saying a couple of words that I think are critically important before we delve into the second part of our conversation. Who is America, or who is American? Um, this show, I don't know how many episodes back it was. One of our participants, Greg, Julia, and Greg, if you guys that watch normally know the couple that's usually on the show. He said, "What's this show? What's this about? What's Grown Folks about?" This might have been 2 years ago. And I said, in a nutshell, it's about community. It's about people coming together that may not otherwise and sharing time and talking on certain things and kind of, uh, expressing oneself and one's inner being and sharing with another human being, so that the internet holds it forever. And maybe one day down the line, somebody finds it and finds value, even if it's not tomorrow or the day after, might be 20 years from now. Somebody just says, "Oh, I caught this thing and it meant something," because they wasn't just talking nonsense. They just wasn't trying to get attention. They were sharing time and exchanging pleasantries, even though if they were having a conversation around some tough subject matter. So I'm grateful that NC 100 supports this endeavor. I'm grateful that NC 100 puts Grown Folks Business as a priority for their community engagement. And I just wanted to get that out the way. I don't think I say that enough. So thanks, and glad to have this level of support and glad to have this level of participation, because I got most of the people back who said they were coming to finish off this awesome conversation about who is America, who is American. So last week we touched on some things and we got a little, contentious, so to speak, and it's not really that serious, so it's not really that contentious, but we got a little like in ourselves and at ourselves, which is all good. It's healthy debate, it's healthy conversation, healthy disagreements, healthy exchanges of ideas. So we touched on what America means to us as individuals. We touched on, is the American dream still alive? It's still a thing. We touched on what your American values are individually as well. We touched on certain things, but we didn't get to the violence that is definitely inherent to America. And I have some other questions I'm going to get to as well. But I want to welcome back Celeste. I want to welcome back Ajane. I want to welcome back Jada Wayne. Thank you guys for holding up your end. And there's no shot at Lisa. Lisa has something come up. So much respect. And her track record is bar none. She's always here. So if she's still here right now, even if it is in spirit. And thank you, Danya, for doing what you do, keeping us without the glitches. So who is America? Who is American? I think we were well on our way to answering that question. Then we got a little derailed, and then we're going to get back on track. And hopefully make the road longer than it actually might be, because I think this is a complex question. I think it's something that's definitely worthy of our attention as members of this great nation, to really try to find some commonality. And with that being said, before I get to the question that is concerning the violence that is inherent to our country, that seems to have been with us since its origin, I wanted to ask, why are Americans not one collective people? Why are we so divided? I'll start with that question, and then I'm going to go to the ones that I specifically came up for each of you, and then we'll kind of wind down on the violence note. So, why are Americans not one collective people? Or do you disagree? Do you think we are one collective people? But I don't think we are. I think there's a lot of dissent, and I want to unpack that if we can. So I'll come to the historian first and see what she might add. And then Celeste, I'll come to you.
Woo, this is a big question. When you asked, I'm like, whoo. This is a conference question, a syllabus question. This is a, yeah, this is one of them. So let me do my very best. Um, I do not believe that we are one collective. I believe that we can be. I believe that we should be, but I do not believe that we are one collective in this country. And the main reason why I believe that is primarily centered around the fact that we don't have a collective narrative or identity in terms of what we believe this nation was founded for, who it was founded by, and some of the issues that surround its founding. And in order to develop an identity, the first thing that you have to start doing is you have to start asking some questions about truth, and you have to start seeing who you are and who you aren't, etc., and so forth. So, I think one of the key reasons that we are divided is because the nation was founded in such turmoil. There were two different parallels of life going on. And when you begin to build something in the midst of slavery and freedom existing right next to each other, um, what you're essentially building is two different worlds. And I don't think that as a nation, we have been able to grapple with the fact that there are different worlds on this same land. People do not live in the same world. And what I mean by that when I say world is your environment, your reality. Literally, we can live in close proximity on the same geography, but our lifestyles are totally different. Now, I believe that we can be a collective if we can begin to grapple with some of the issues of this. But we still are not yet able to even come to the conclusion that slavery was as impactful that it was. I mean, we have people that argue this, but this nation fought the bloodiest war over slavery, an entire war. And, you know, today as a nation, we're still very divided about that. And yeah, I'll cut it there.
Great response, and that's excuse me, primarily why I started with you. I figured you would touch on the places that we are lacking in um, that collective oneness are steeped in the history and the just lack of reconciling with it. Uh, there's so many places that we could look and see opportunities to really come together and really align ourselves with this identity that remains elusive, this American identity, this thing that is so uh, celebrated, so desired, but really so elusive. And I wanted to throw in that so much is intertwined also with this notion of individualism that has all this that was very connected to the founding of the country. It was a lot of intentional energy around valuing oneself and what's in your sphere as opposed to the collective, even though that founding document, you know, speaks of this uniqueness that America is supposed to become. So yeah, there's been some missed opportunities to really appreciate our experience as a collective, our collective history, as I often say.
Nelson,
Um,
I'll just add real quick. I'm sorry,
but
0.5 seconds. I'll add really quickly to your point about individualism. As a nation, we haven't even yet began to grapple with the question of whether or not the American Revolution was truly a revolution or a civil war. We haven't even we're not able to grapple with that yet. Because a revolution requires social change, political change, and economic change. They essentially that that wasn't complete. That wasn't different. So I just wanted to put that out there. Yeah.
great observation. That argument is one that I would love to read some works on because there is a so much symmetry between the place that America pretty much originated from. There's a lot of symmetry, and there's a reason why it was easy to get back to business between both groups. And you're right, that does kind of limit a total ascribing of revolution. So I like that. I like that observation. Celeste, what are your thoughts on this? Why are we not one collective people here?
Okay, first, Ajane, one day, me and you, we could talk about that, about was the American Revolution a revolution? Because I most definitely, this is going to sound a little problematic, but it's okay. It was a white man's revolution because they didn't change the social order at the time amongst white men, and they didn't change the social order at the time amongst Africans and African slaves at the time, but they changed the way that they operated. The economy changed for them, by them. The social standings changed for them, by them. But that goes into my point about America. America has always been a haves and have-nots from the time that the first settlers came. I mean, it was the indigenous peoples that had been here for hundreds of years and the white settlers who would then infect them with different diseases that they were not immune to. And basically they lived their lives in the COVID-19 pandemic for what, almost 100 years? Because as each wave of white settlers came over from Europe, with them also came disease. I was just reading a paper and it talked about how Christopher Columbus is celebrated in America, but Christopher Columbus was exiled from Spain and Portugal, even though Spain funded his trip because they heard how he didn't even make it to America. He made it to the Caribbean or Caribbean, depending on who you are, how you pronounce it. And he pillaged the islands and he pillaged the women. And in Europe, he was not respected nor celebrated. And his name wasn't even Christopher. It was Christoph. So it's always been the haves and the have-nots. And then you go into that. Ajane made a great point. Who's American? If you ask me who's American, I'm going to tell you indigenous people, but that's also because I know how to read a book and I understand that my view of America is not how America actually formed. If you ask me who's American, I'm going to say it's the people who cultivated this land, took care of this land, lived on this land for the hundreds of years before one group of people out of Europe showed up. Black people, are Black people American? Yeah. Are they respected as Americans? The Dred Scott decision, there was an entire legal decision saying that the United States Constitution did not apply to the Black Americans that were building the country at the time for free. We're referencing 1776 when America got its independence. Woohoo. All that stuff they were fighting over, all that economic growth and economic prosperity and all the money that Great Britain was going to tax was coming out of the South, and it was coming from the African slaves. But the African slaves would not see a drop of that because they were not American. Their work was free labor because they were kidnapped, and the rules did not apply to them. When my biggest pet peeve is when white people say, well, my family was indentured servants and that was slavery too. No, because after 5 years of service, you were free and you were given a lump sum of money to go start your new life so you could buy your own farm and economically contribute. My ancestors ain't get that. My great-great-grandfather is an old white man. I got a picture of it. He looks very suspicious looking. I'm very, very upset for my great-great-grandmother because I feel like that was an extremely traumatic experience for every day of her life. Like, who is American? And America's violence. Ajane brings up the Civil War and how it was the bloodiest, deadliest war America's ever fought. And we came in 1917 and tore it up for World War I. World War II, America showed up 2 years later. The war's over because we're dropping atomic bombs and raiding Nazi death camps. We just doing it all. The Civil War is still the bloodiest. I mean, shoot, the Korean War and Vietnam, they were bad. Like, we ain't take an L in the Korean War, but people like to bridge over that because it was like a year that we were there. The Korean War was bad. Vietnam, we lost that war. In Vietnam, we got our butts kicked. Men came home with so many different problems, Agent Orange, this, that, and the third. The Civil War still is the deadliest war. So when there's an entire war fought on keeping you enslaved so that prosperous white men, not poor white men, because the Irish hated black people because they were out there in the fields working with them for a small sum of money. Black slaves actually ruined the Irish prosperity in North Carolina when you get into the back country. I was about to say the black country. The back country, when you get into Rocky Mountain, places like that. Like, it was poor white people and wealthy white people. It's two different systems that were working for them at the time. That's why most of the overseers, the paddy rollers, which turned into the police, that's why it's called a paddy wagon till this day. They were Irish. They were poor. Their job was to round up and watch the slaves that they could not themselves afford to have. Like, I don't know if I directly answered your question, but America's divided. It's always been divided. It's different systems for different people. Black people were not meant to be a part of that. Hispanic people, Latinx people, Mexican individuals, they were not meant to be a part of that. Canadians were, because they were white settlers, coming out of New York, and the French in Canada. The Dutch happened to migrate up there. Like, it just wasn't meant for anybody that wasn't wealthy and white. And for poor white people to think that the rules of America apply to them, sweetheart, they were never intended for you. You were intended to come here and either build your own farm and collect your own wealth in slaves, or go back. Like, poor white people, they were meant to be laborers as well. And once that labor was done up and all that, they were meant to go somewhere else.
Yeah. So yeah, you are definitely shooting with both barrels, and I appreciate it. I'm here for all of the complexities of this conversation. So yeah, there's a really good book if you're interested, if you haven't already, Celeste. The Columbian Exchange, recommended and assigned by Dr. Parker. I thought it was a fascinating read, and it talks about all of the diseases and all of the things that the agriculture, the animals, again, the diseases, everything that was kind of exchanged when the Americas were touched by Europeans. And Caribbean or Caribbean is correct. Either one, you can just rest assured, no matter which way you say it, it's the right one, right way. I've been assured of that. And yeah, as far as the most American, my studies and research say give it to Black Americans, because everything that this country has come closer to being about, which it claimed it was about at its inception, is on the backs of Black Americans. I'm not speaking of a continent with no name that had been inhabited for not just hundreds but thousands of years by a native people. And again, it's a continent, this vast land that was inhabited by people that didn't necessarily get along. Another good book I'll recommend is Ned Blackhawk's Violence Over the Land, which we're getting to that conversation. We're coming to that violence part of the
Every government building in DC was built by Black slaves and is kept up by Hispanic immigrant workers. Just pointing that out. No, I'm saying when we, like, Black people, as far as like what they've contributed.
Black people maintain those buildings for a long time.
No, I'm saying Black people maintain, like, I'm basically just trying to make the point of, I don't believe there has ever been on record an all white group of people building or maintaining the White House, the Capitol, the judicial building in DC. Like, Black laborers, no, not even Black laborers, Black slaves built the White House even after the War of 1812 when the British burned it down. Black laborers, I think there was a Black architect that designed the Capitol, and Benjamin Banneker, he's the one who designed the parallel streets. Like, basically, Black people did that, and then they didn't even want a Black man up in the White House.
Hey, I'm totally, yeah, and that's what resilience is. I think we mentioned resilience last week. But yeah, Benjamin Banneker, who was in correspondence with Thomas Jefferson. I mean, how wild is that we don't talk about it from a collective? That's that possibility for a collective people if we talk about our history as a collective, and we get to that point. Maybe we become one thing. Jay, I'm coming to you, man. Why are we not one collective people?
Man, Ajane got me sitting here thinking about the Civil War and the Revolution. Like, I kind of left y'all for a minute because I was like, it's definitely can be considered a civil war because it was a war between citizens. But I could see how it's a revolt. And then I'm like, well, is a revolt considered a type of civil war? So thanks, Ajane. So I'm gonna be sitting there with that for a while. I attended a DEI session the week before last. So my mind shift changed a little bit. And it was one speaker and one dear friend of mine named Kelly Wilhelm. And she said, I need y'all to stop saying the system is broken. The system is working the exact way it was supposed to work. So the system isn't working. Isn't broken, it's effective. So when we ask, like, why are we divided? Because that's how the system was designed. The system was never about a collective anything other than selfish gain or prosperity one way or another. And I think when we look at the social dynamic of it, I think it gets very complicated. But in essence, the United States only are united for certain things. That's why I can go to Louisiana and don't know one law. That's why when I can go to a Commonwealth state or Kentucky or Virginia, there are similarities, but they're totally different from North Carolina. States are literally have their own jurisdiction on so many areas. So even when we talk about them being the United States, that's united in theory. Because you can excel in one place and you don't excel in another one. And we don't ever talk about how disjointed and how ununified we are. We are just a collective unit of governments that work together on certain things, but we are very divided on other things. Like there are certain people now who are doing things within their state because they have a license to do it. If we were truly a united front, it would be one that transfers over to all. But we were never designed to be a collective, unified people or system. So I think it's working the very way that it was designed to work. And so I struggle with the America and the American because I look at America as this system. The Americans are just the byproducts of this system, meaning either we were born into this system or we created the system. And the ones who created the system, in theory, are no longer here. And so a lot of us are a byproduct of a system that was created and it's kind of just grown out of hand. It's just out of hand. And so it's consuming some learn to live with it, some learn to live without it, and some just die by it. I think that it never was designed to be that way. So it's working exactly how it was designed to work.
So I'm going to come right back to you, Jay. So be ready. It's going to be your specific question, and I think it's apropos based on what you just responded with. But I'll say, knowing that a value was placed on whiteness, which I believed completely disrupted and continues to disrupt any energies towards really that identity, that elusive identity of Americanness, that will be fair and equitable, that is life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, et cetera, et cetera. I believe that understanding that there's value in this skin tone and having some connection to being Eurocentric disrupts us. But my thoughts about this matter reside in, when you know better, you should do better. So that's the kind of ultimate point of my question. We know the system is functioning. It's now a hands-off system, Jay. It's like, it's on autopilot, right? So it doesn't even require but so much interference or tilting. But when do we disrupt that? When do we say no? We're something different. And you can speak on that if you got something, Jay. But this is your question. What role will love play in sustaining America? Because we all kind of agree, I think, that there's some things that are askew and it could go left, right, up, down. But how do we just sustain this thing, and what role will love play in it? Because you a guy about love.
Oh, well, I'm gonna answer the first part of what you were saying first. Why would I fix a system that works to my advantage? Like me as a person who is constantly oppressed, yes, I want the upper hand. But if we have a true conversation about equity, how many times have we had conversations about equity and we're not sure if people want revenge, justice, or privilege?
Can I interrupt you real quick?
Yep.
Because I want you to have this thought as you continue to unpack that. You would disrupt it even if you benefited from it, primarily if you recognize a shared humanity and if you realize how much greater things could be. But that's a whole different thing. But you have to incorporate that somewhere in that conversation.
Yeah, but we have the revelation of oppression is my point. Our skew from how we live life, we're forced and have always been forced to look at things 360. There are some people who get the privilege of not learning stuff and will survive. And that's just the truth. Like the oppressed have to educate, thrive, and also be sensitive to the oppressor's feelings because they also are the gatekeeper at the same time. The oppressor doesn't have the stressors that we have that force us to think 360 on every single thing. So that's why even when people claim to say that they truly are advocates to change, for your point, they will argue about how things are inhumane, but are they willing to give up their job? Are they willing to give up their livelihood? Are you willing to exchange your privilege for access? I have seen it too many times where these people wear these cloaks of allies, but they're not advocates for change. They know all the terminology. They know everything to do. And they've made very good friends with some of these people who are even capped for them. But they are the same ones that are struggling, that are straining them because of the fact that they are gatekeepers within themselves. That whole thing gets me upset, so I'm gonna stop because the ones who perfected gatekeeping and the ones who perfected this false narrative around allyship really does something because they're damaging. Because every time we have conversations about slavery, I always say this: we never talk about the damage that they did on the supervisor. We talk about the field Negro, we talk about the house Negro, but we don't ever talk about the damage that they did with the supervisor by creating a position for slaves to make them feel like they're not slaves, but oppress their own people while serving these other people by getting that yes sir cloak. And it's still present today. We have a whole society of Bojangles who really think they're out here doing some advocacy work, and all they're doing is tap dancing on the necks of all the people that are oppressed.
Jay, I'm going to ask if you can, man, join me Tuesday with an RELC lunchtime chat that's going to be actually titled, it is titled Redefining Ally. So I'll send you that link and everything, but I'd love to have you so you could meet somebody who I think is not someone who's playing the shell game that I'm aware of also. So there are some, John Brown's that high litmus test. We need more of him. And if you want to answer real quick, do you have a love?
Yeah, love.
I'm sorry. That was for
I'm sorry.
Forgive me.
Go
ahead. Go ahead.
Hold on, Ajane. Go ahead, Jay. The love.
No, for the love thing, because we have a whole theory about it.
Yeah.
I don't feel that when you understand love, it changes your perception on how you see things. And until we move away from the illusions of love, because a lot of people do take on the Greek philosophy of love, they usually think about, is it agape, is it phileo, is it storge, is it familia? And all of those teach you to deny self. None of them is about you awakening to self. So when people truly tap in to who they are, they will see a lens of value for one another versus an expectation that is burden on one another.
And
But I'll
that
stop there.
no, the perfect that goes right into line with what you spoke so passionately about right before. Thank you. That's why that question was specifically for you. Welcome, Andre. Glad you can make it. Ajane, I'm going to come to you with
Andre.
I'm going to come to you with your specific question. Andre, to catch you up, we're talking about who is America, who is American tonight. So just kind of go with the vibe. I don't have a specific question for you because this is second part of the conversation. So I had some specific questions for these young people on the line. So Ajane, your specific question is, who is the American who best embodies the promise of America? That's a pure historian's question. You can give me two, but just keep it brief and concise. And I know you wanted to say something to Jay Dwayne. So if you want to give me all that in a little bit of time, you got it.
So, I was writing down my question. So before I start talking, I just want to clarify. My question is, who best embodies the promise of America? Okay.
That's right.
So I'll try to connect these. But I wanted to touch on something that Jay Dwayne said about the Negroes up on that nag, and the way that we have not addressed the damage that being an overseer has done, and even about love, etc. And one of the primary things that we have to get ahead of is this pervasive and damaging value that is capitalism, because it has caused people to corrupt love and commodify it. And that's why today the people that are making the most money off these diversity talks are white women out teaching oppression to an audience full of black folk that, baby, we know. You know what I'm saying? Like, we know. So how does that happen? So even when the truth comes out, one of the most pervasive values this nation has given is capitalism, that you commodify any little thing that you can, especially humanity or forms of that. So I just wanted to thank Jay Dwayne for that sermon, because it was indeed a sermon. I would say that one of the theories that I have about freedom, etc., on a plantation is that those who work closest to massa are the only people that believe that they're the freest. The closer you are to that slaveholder, the more you believe you are free. And why is that? Because you've been taught that the more you can commodify and co-opt your own humanity at the expense of others, that gives you access to this American dream.
That water colder over there.
Right. So that's what I have to say about them folk up on that nag. Because the nag ain't yours. You didn't buy it. Your papers ain't stamped. When the people stop you, they gonna say, who is that Negro up on that nag? Okay, so anyway, I'll leave the Django stuff alone. But okay, back to my question. Who best embodies the promise of America? So my answer is two-part. I'm going to talk about what America actually is and then what it should be. So who embodies the promise of America? When you take a look at how, because America is an idea. United States of America, states somewhat united over the promise of what it means to be American, etc. So when you look at the formulation of America, people who were actively pushing the American Revolution, the sons of revolution, laid the seeds of this right-wing extremism, and it was a third of the colonial population up until right before the onset of the American Revolution. And the reason why it was only a third was because it was the people who were turning the most profits from breweries, from early manufacturing, from slave imports, from all of these textile mills, etc. And the sole reason that they decided to go against was because they wanted to build the promise that they and only they were able to reap the benefits of their labor. So their ability to capture and commodify human beings at any cost. The promise of America was that we will design a system that is not as different from what we're going against. We're going to keep the large majority of it, 85% of the system that was built is similar to what was going on in England, because they appreciated the ability to commodify human beings and to take someone's entire existence and you be the sole beneficiary. The reason why they went against that was because King George III began telling them, y'all cannot keep stealing and not paying these taxes. So the right-wing ideology and extremist belief that built this nation and the promise of America was that no one else can benefit from labor that is not even yours other than you, not even the leader of your nation. So who benefits the most from that promise today? Their sons and their daughters who still own these corporations, who own our federal government. Because that is the promise, that is the sole reason why they went against their own people. Because they wanted to continue privateering and pirateering, which is stealing goods, not paying for them, all of this criminal activity that we love to talk about, law and order. But there were no laws, and there was only one order that built the promise of this nation. And that promise is that a handful of people are able to benefit off of commodifying human beings. Because when you look up what the word capital means, it means privilege. That's what it means. Capital means that you own something and that you can do with it whatever you will at everyone else's expense except yours. And so when you apply that to what they disseminated to get the revolution going and to spread those ideas, out of that comes this tiered dream of America. They created one for immigrants. They created one for women. They created one for, but all of it is under the guise that will give you a little. And it isn't an exchange. We'll give you just a little bit, but you will always be our prophet. And you can see it. You can see it. Yes.
I don't want to take you off that.
No, go ahead.
But listen, American aristocracy, we get it. We know that's a thing. I want you.
The second part.
Give me that one. Give me that one so I get to somebody else. Give me that one. Give me that person.
I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah. So for the second part, who embodies the promise of America? I will say that as Black people, we embody the struggle for humanity that the promise of America should be. Humanity, not just citizenship. I'm not talking about citizenship. That is a construct. That's an earthly construct. Citizenship is state-sanctioned rights. And if somebody gives you your freedom, that means you're not free because somebody gave it to you. So when it comes to what I believe we embody the promise of humanity. And that's what America should be.
You giving it to the Black folks as well. I think that's a good take. I will say really quickly that, once civilizations establish themselves and places draw lines that are, as we know, not real, but there are borders. Once you have decrees and contracts and compacts and have an understanding of what is to be expected in your area, then there is some level of value placed on being a citizen of that place. So we'll unpack that another time because I want to get Celeste in, then I'm going to get Andre in, and then we're going to go run back around the space. But Ajane, as always, greatly appreciate your contributions and your intellect, as you already know. So Celeste, I have a specific question for you as well, and it is, how do we fix the American justice system? And I know that one is probably another show and a half, but in the most efficient way that you can answer it, how do we fix it? Because there's a lot of unfairness going on, right?
I mean, it sounds real complex, but the first thing that law school taught me is you don't. The American justice system is made up. Like, most of this stuff is decided via common law. Common law comes from previous judges' decisions. So on my con law exam, the last question was who decides? And I'm like, Professor Mueller, we spent all this time doing all this stuff, reading all these cases for the biggest question on your exam to be, when it comes to decisions of the American judicial system, who decides? And the genuine question is going to be either the people that you elect or the people that are appointed, because all federal judicialships are lifetime appointments. So who decides? Well, let's go through it. What is it? The Dred Scott decision. The Dred Scott case was overturned. You get Brown v. Board that ends segregation. Oh gosh, there were so many cases that were decided one way.
Plessy versus Ferguson, I think.
Thank you. Plessy v. Ferguson was overturned by Brown v. Board. Those decisions were made almost 100 years apart. I think about 75. You have Plessy v. not Plessy. You have Dred Scott. Dred Scott gets overturned. Black people deserve rights, but Dred Scott's going to be overturned by the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, all working simultaneously. Who decides? The people that decide are the people that we elect, or are appointed by the people that we elect. And as we know, elections go up and down. Like what? We went from Barack Obama to Donald Trump to Joe Biden. And this election cycle is looking pretty good for my dude, Joe. So he'll have his 4 more years. God pray he makes it, because some days I be worried about him. You know, because once you get of a certain age, my mama always says, my mama's 65. She said, at this age, she said, I tell your daddy, when we meet with and hang out with our friends, you got to get everything that you need from them. She said, because we getting up there. She was like, I can't be doing that whole, I'll see you sometime next year. She said, nah, we 65. She was like, Lord said, every year you get over 70 is a blessing. So because every year we get over 70. You said what?
I think I'm going to go west, Celeste. I'm going to go west.
You're going to go west? I'm, you know what? Bye. I just realized what you meant. Bye. But she was like, every year that we get over 70 is going to be a blessing. My daddy was like, your mama got longevity. Both of her grandmothers lived till 90 something. My nana lived till 90. No, my nana lived till 82, but yeah, we just going to chalk it all up. My mama got longevity. My dad, he was like, well, this, that, and the third. Mom was like, nah, collect stuff now because we 65. She was like, put it in my hand. Get your paperwork from the doctor, XYZ. Don't be doing that whole, I'll see you next year. No.
So you're not going for Joe Biden then?
Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Y'all, it's okay. Felton, no, I got a thick leather belt with his name on it.
Hey, Celeste, it's all love. But is. Yeah, the irony of this moment is that, I had Hunter Biden's name by this question, because as you're stating, and I'm glad you took it to the political realm, that's exactly what's wrong with our justice system. It is at the whim of people who are in power, and the same consequences 7-10 years ago are not the same when they don't want them to be. And that's what we're up against. So look, well said, well spoken until you started stumping. So I'm do you have a last word before I let Andre get a piece in tonight?
One, I got a thick leather belt with your name on it now.
Okay.
That's one. But two, basically, the justice stop. You know what? The justice system will not change until we take the politics out of it, but it also won't change. Well, honestly, that's it, because I was going to say it also won't change until we stop electing stupid people. But America's America.
That's one thing, and it's the same as the other. So I totally agree.
Felton, don't do that, because you already know you in trouble. Next time we go to dinner, y'all, he might not come back the same
I'm
way.
looking forward to it. Drinks on you. Drinks on you. All right. So Andre, I hope you got enough of a feeling of what we're discussing. I'll give you the question we kind of began with last week. What does being American mean to you? And feel free to paint a little bit outside the lines with your answer since you joined us. And then we'll go around the room and I'll ask my last question and we'll get out of here. So what does it mean to you to be American?
I'm going to answer that, but I got a couple things. So what Miss Willis said earlier, and I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses on. I think your last name is Willis, right? AT? Yep.
It is.
Okay.
You can just
All right.
say Ajane, Andre.
Ajane. So my sister. So one of the interesting things she said, a couple of interesting things she said, where she pointed out that America is an experiment. And with any experiment, you ultimately don't know. You have an idea of what the results are going to be, but you don't really know. And I like to say, even though this nation's been here for X number of years, the experiment is still active. I have a daughter who just started college recently, and I remember telling her this past weekend that, hey, young lady, don't ever forget, one generation ago, you wouldn't have been allowed to go to Mercer for medical school. It wasn't that long ago. So I literally told my daughter that last week. And, she's looking at me because the world that she's known, which also goes back to something Dwayne said earlier. Yes, my role, my job where I am professionally has allowed me to expose her to different things than I went through as a kid. I remember being bused across town in Southern California to go to quote unquote integrated schools, things of that nature. But I guess my point is, it wasn't that long ago. The other thing Ajane said, I hope I got that right, that I think is important. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, with a former journalist. He's passed away now. His name is Carl Rowan. Carl T. Rowan, if you ever know who that gentleman was. I was blessed to actually win his scholarship to send me off to college out of a Job Corps center after I got a YA in Southern California. I was not on the right path. But long story short, here's my point to you. Carl Rowan told me one day that, Andre, be prepared, because in the future there will be another war. There'll be another civil war. But he told me it's not going to be on race. It's going to be about class. Carl believed that the next big war in this nation is going to be about the class system. So what's my point? I do think America is changing the dynamics, because you even see people of other races sort of pushing back a little bit on society as we know it here in this country. This experiment, if you will. It's more people that faces are a different color that realize that the system is not set up for everyone to have equal opportunity. Everybody doesn't have that equity in that bite at the apple. And the more and more you pay attention, you're going to see more and more people are realizing that and starting to act out accordingly. So what does America mean to me? America means to me, what will my role be in this experiment of where we are? What do I need to do as an African-American male, a Black man in America, to help uplift my community? The other question you just asked, Celeste, was about the justice system. And I wish I could ask Celeste this question, being an attorney. Whatever happened to being judged by a jury of your peers? I don't know if people are judged by a jury of their peers. I could be 100% wrong. because yes, I guess that's my point, right? What would the justice system look like if people were truly judged by a jury of their peers, not fellow just citizens that live in Guilford County, North Carolina? And if you guys know what I mean, your peers.
Yeah, that's a great observation, Andre. I recall getting jury duty, and I was there to be a jurist. As you know, we are conditioned to think that that's something we're supposed to call out of, figure out way out of. But the unfortunate thing is not enough. If the majority of people that are on trial look like me, come from similar circumstances that I come from, but I'm not on their jury, then you're right. There's something else to combat on top of the political aspects that we've already discussed.
Absolutely.
You had more. You had more you wanted to add?
Nope. But
okay. Listen. Stay on mic. I'm coming around the room, and I'm gonna start with you, Andre. Are you proud to be an American?
Yes, I am.
My man. I am proud. Also, I'll say mine. All the complexities, all the experiments, all of the overcoming of adversity, all of the surviving, all of the thriving, all of the adversity, everything that comes with this this place that I was born into, all that it has shown me and all that it has teased me with in terms of the potential for doing something great and magnificent. I also will tag along with Andre in terms of my role in this experiment, what I contribute. And I like to, again, appreciate NC 100 for giving us this platform to have these exchange of ideas, because this is part of my contribution as well as you guys. This is part of your contribution as well. Ajane, are you proud to be an American?
Oh boy, people are gonna say that girl there is an extremist. Okay, so my first question is, would my nation call me an American? I am humbled. I won't say proud. I'm humbled to be a part of a lineage of people that prioritize humanity, a universal humanity that prioritize the love of God. I'm humbled to be from a lineage of survivors that prioritize resistance and resilience, education, community building, and just overall co-opting some of the toughest issues in life. I believe that this nation can elevate the beautiful people that are living here. I have a lot of hope, but I don't know. First off, I don't use the word proud. It's a spiritual belief. But second off, again, what my nation called me an American. Now, if we can start to have that conversation, then yeah, but ashamed to be a part of a lineage of people that belong to this land, I will never be. I will always be humbled to say that I am a small portion of a very long line of people who survived. So
good response. I appreciate that. And I wanted to also, I meant to throw this in when I was asking your particular question: who embodies America's promise? I wanted to throw out there, and you already said his name, and you know what I'm going to say, Ajane. John Brown. I mean, I think, a great book, Patriotic Treason, breaks all the reasons. Yeah, breaks all those reasons why. Yeah. Not averse to violence, but very devout to the ideas that this country says it was about. So yeah, he's an embodiment of what America actually.
David Walker.
A promise. I'm sorry.
I said in David Walker.
Oh yes,
that's an appeal for some citizenship that is rooted in humanity.
Beautiful. Yeah, the collective. He's noting the collective. He's noting the collective and the potential. It's beautiful. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Great call. Celeste, are you proud to be an American?
Funny enough, the camp I was teaching last week was a camp based in patriotism. Yeah, they bring back the Black woman to teach government, and then in shock when I say something not so patriotic. I don't want to live anywhere else. I'm not going to say that other countries simply are not better. I'm going to say we don't talk about racism throughout Europe and throughout Asia the way that we need to. Like, yes, universal health care, yes, better work-life balance. Also, I'm Black, so that don't necessarily translate the same way. I don't want to go anywhere else simply because of safety reasons and lifestyle that I'm accustomed to. But I'm not necessarily proud when I hang out with my international friends and I'm the American in the group, because they associate America with trauma. And then me being Black, it's like, oh, there's the trauma of being an American, but then there's the trauma of like, oh, are you really American? And like, your American ain't necessarily that great. Like when you meet somebody who's from Northern Asia or Eastern Asian countries, they're like, people turn fire hoses on you. And I'm like, okay, that was in the 60s, but yeah, that happened. And am I proud to be an American? Not necessarily, but do I want to go anywhere else? No.
Dig it. Good answer. I like it. Jay, closing with you, bro.
Yes, I'm proud to be an American. No, I'm not proud of the things that we've done. Some of the things that we've done.
Dig it. I think the tapestry is still being painted, and we're gonna hopefully be a part of what makes things better in the future, and not too distant future. I hope that things like Grown Folks Business contribute wonderful ideas and energies towards better outcomes for our great nation. And I think the exchange of ideas is what it's all about, and it's what's been lacking. Sometimes we got to cut off the distractions and sit down and talk to one another. And I'm grateful that you guys find the value in this space to share some time with me and have some conversation. And this is my joy. I appreciate it. I was reading a little article that was talking about happiness, and it was like happiness is a longer term thing. And I think we've discussed that in this space. And Jay, I think you were on that show, but we were talking about happiness and pleasure and all of that stuff. But joy is saying was, something you could get and hold on to incrementally. So this is my joy. I appreciate you guys sharing in my joy and sharing in this space and time with me. And I value you tremendously, each and every one of you. And if you're not here tonight, I still value you. If you're watching, I value you. Thank you so much. Thank you all. Ajane, appreciate you. Celeste, thanks. Andre, glad you could make it in tonight. Jay, always a pleasure. Danya, thanks for doing what you do. You all have a wonderful night. Take care out there, and catch you on the flip side.
Ajane, we're